Hey everybody, happy Thursday. It looks like spring has finally come. One of the things that some people do during the spring is a lot of cleaning and organizing and getting rid of things you don't need and sorting things out and putting things in better places to be organized. And we have a story that we've read, I think just one time, about a boy named Henry who cleans his room. And so I'm going to read that again, because I was thinking about the number of bags that I have filled recently with things that I don't need and that someone else might be able to use more than I can. So I'm putting things that we're done using and setting them aside until a time when I can donate them or give them to someone else who might be able to use them more. This is called The Day That Henry Cleaned His Room. And it's a little bit silly. I would say that it's based on something that all of us have done, cleaning our rooms or helping to clean our houses. And instead of it being nonfiction, a story that's actually true, there are lots of little clues in this that even though everybody knows how to clean their room, this story's a little bit fictional because of some of the things that he finds in his room specifically. The Day That Henry Cleaned His Room was written by Sarah Wilson, and she also did all of the illustrations. The day that Henry cleaned his room, reporters came. So reporters are the people that you see on the news who are telling important things or interesting things that are happening in the world. Henry got up early. "I know I can do it this time," he said. Henry's mother and father cheered. So did his little sister, Lou. It had been a year since anyone had seen the floor of Henry's room. He was the only one who knew the secret path from the door to his bed. "Okay," Henry yelled from his bedroom door. "Everybody out." Look at that room. Can you imagine getting from the door to his bed? I'm glad he knew how to do that. The first ones out were Henry's fish. It had been so long since Henry cleaned their tank that they had grown long legs and climbed out, preferring the air to dirty water. They scowled at Henry. That means they looked at him with an unfriendly look on their faces and walked down the stairs. The mice came next. They brought out Henry's collections of mismatched socks and rubber bands. They weren't happy about moving. Look at those fish walking on their back fins as if they were feet. That's silly. The raccoons came after them. They carried Henry's collections of corn cobs, stale hamburger buns, cereal boxes, and feathers. Henry's mother was shocked. "Who are those animals?" she asked. "And why are they all so big?" "Henry's friends," said his father. "He has kept them well fed." So if you look in that picture, you can see all the animals that are leaving Henry's room while he cleans. A flea circus came out of Henry's room and did cartwheels down the stairs. "I knew there'd be bugs in there," said Henry's sister Lou. A possum rode out wearing Henry's Hawaiian shirt. "I'd wondered where that went," said Henry's mother. So fleas are little tiny bugs that particularly love to live on animals, and they make animals really miserable because they bite them, and then the bites that they leave itch, kind of like mosquitoes. So we've got mosquitoes up here where we live. We don't have fleas very often because it's so high up in the mountains and too cold for fleas to live. But in places where fleas live, they really make the lives of animals miserable, and they can bite people too. So it's really gross that he had a bunch of fleas inside of his room. A possum's another type of animal that we don't have up here. It's just too high and too cold. Possums are marsupials, which means that they have a pocket, a pouch, the moms in the front of their bodies, and so they have babies when they're too tiny to live on their own, and the babies crawl up and inside that pouch, and that's where they live until they're big enough to live on their own. They don't really wear Hawaiian shirts, hats, or ride skateboards. That is fiction. They don't do that. Finally, something long and green and scaly slithered right out from under Henry's bed and ran down the stairs. "What was that?" Lou gasped. Henry was puzzled. "I don't know," he said. "Must be somebody's friend who stayed over." So all you can really see is just a green blur out from under Henry's bed and down the stairs. With everyone out of his room, Henry started the real work. The army took away his parachutes. The Historical Society took his collection of old bottles and cans. So a historical society would be a group of people who like to study history or the things that happened in the past. And so they're collecting all of his old bottles and cans because they think those might be historical one day. They might show how life was in the past before the other people came along. Henry's scout troop took the old newspapers and magazines. "Wow," said Henry. "I can see the window now." It was hard going, but Henry kept at it. So he didn't give up. He kept working even though that room was so dirty, so messy. Scientists came to study the different kinds of dust and must and moss and mushrooms that were growing out of Henry's closets and walls. Suddenly, Henry found a new window. Birds he had never seen before flew out of his closet and off for the open sky. Birds living in his closet. He found the bathrobe his Aunt Skookie had given him for his 3rd birthday. He found his bicycle. He found birds' nests and beach pebbles and old crayons and tennis shoelaces. Henry washed and wiped and scrubbed and polished. Outside, his family had a big yard sale of all the things Henry didn't want. So they put things out in their yard so that if people wanted them, they could come and buy them. His mother helped him change his bed sheets. And then Henry spoke on television. "I did it," he shouted. "I have a clean room." Everybody cheered. Henry was the talk of the neighborhood. He's feeling very proud of himself. He really accomplished something big. When night finally came and everyone had gone home, Henry went up to his clean room. He got into his clean bed, but he couldn't sleep. He could see walls and windows and even the door to his room. "It's so empty," Henry wailed. Wailed's a different word for cried. "You'll get used to it, dear," said his mother and father. "I like a clean room," said his sister Lou. But Henry lay awake, staring into the dark until he heard the squeak of the window slowly opening. Why do you think the window might be opening? What is your prediction? What might happen next? His room's all clean. He can see the window. I see a little clue in the picture that I didn't notice before. There's the top of a ladder outside of his window. Do you see that ladder? I wonder what's coming up the ladder. Let's see. One by one, his friends tiptoed back into the room, except for the long, green, scaly something that slithered right under Henry's bed. They all carried something: socks, rubber bands, corn cobs, cereal boxes, feathers. They spread out comfortably on the floor. "At least I'm not doing it," Henry said. So even though his room is becoming a complete disaster, huge mess again, he's saying, "Well, I'm not making the mess." All of his animal friends are making the mess. It's another hint that this is fiction. Definitely. When Henry's room was nice and messy again, everybody curled up in a cozy place to sleep. They were all very happy. It must be the clean room, Henry thought. And then he fell asleep too. So that book is super funny, and it makes me feel kind of uncomfortable sometimes because that big a mess would drive me crazy. I would feel the opposite way that Henry feels. I wouldn't be able to sleep if my room were as messy as Henry's room. But he's so used to it being messy, he can't sleep when it's nice and clean. So I think he might have a part in messing it up again so he can sleep. What do you think? The day that Henry cleaned his room. There's a poem that's a little bit about all the stuff that you might collect also. It's called Hector the Collector. Hector the Collector collected bits of string, collected dolls with broken heads, and rusty bells that would not ring. Pieces out of picture puzzles, bent up nails and ice cream sticks, twists of wires, worn out tires, paper bags, and broken bricks. Old chipped vases, half shoelaces, Gatling guns that wouldn't shoot, leaky boats that wouldn't float, and stopped up horns that wouldn't toot. Butter knives that had no handles, copper keys that fit no locks, rings that were too small for fingers, dried up leaves and patched up socks, worn out belts that had no buckles, electric trains that had no tracks, airplane models, broken bottles, three-legged chairs, and cups with cracks. Hector the Collector loved these things with all his soul. Loved them more than shining diamonds, loved them more than glistening gold. Hector called to all the people, "Come and share my treasure trunk." And all the silly, sightless people came and looked and called it junk. So the collector, Hector the Collector, called all of his things treasures. But what did other people think they were? Junk. So I don't know what you're like. I don't know if you like to collect things and if it makes you sad if they disappear or have to get cleaned up. But for some people, they love to have these collections of things. That's a picture you can spend some time looking at and thinking about all of the words in the poem that talk about the things he liked to collect. And there would be pictures of all of those things in what he calls his treasure trunk. But what do other people call it? Junk. So you decide if it's a collection of treasures or a collection of junk. And I will see you tomorrow.